I love the X-Men, so it breaks my heart that so many of the movies are at best pretty good,
Rick Lyncher, Charles Xavier, go fuck yourself.
mostly rubbish, and some atrocious. Part of the reason the movies are generally so bad is that the movie adaptations of the comic counterparts are most of the time just absolutely terrible. It's either that they got the motivations of a character wrong, or they relegate a character to a glorified extra, or they make their powers a lot weaker. We've covered the X-Men themselves here, talking about some of the worst examples, with a standalone video for possibly the greatest nerf of all, our man Darwin. But today, it's time for some of those that are sometimes less heroic. I'm Danny Baker and this is 6 Degrees, and I'm doing away with the adaptation of Wimp Trope stuff. This is just more X-Men characters in movies who aren't as good as their comic origins and are mostly wrong uns, but have also been good sometimes and are sometimes misunderstood. I think it's catchy. So before we start, I retract my correction of my pronunciation of Namor. I looked into it and the name in the comics is just the word Roman backwards. Any different pronunciations are just based on where you're from. It's like correcting me for saying tomato, not tomato. So I'm calling him Namor, and I shall apologise for that no more. And look, if you want to pronounce it no more, you go for your life. Feel free to school me on physics and pronunciations of Norse mythological places, of course. Anyway, so our first degree today, we'll start with a smaller character, an amuse-bouche of mutants. It's Kenichi Harada, the Silver Samurai. So Kenichi was first introduced way back in 1980, and he was sharp as a tack, literally. You see, Ken's mutant ability is to charge things with tachyon energy, and what he bloody loves to do is charge up his sword, making it able to slice through almost anything. Not adamantium though, you silly goose. He's dabbled as a mercenary, and then he had a stint working as Viper's bodyguard as part of Hydra, Hail Hydra. Here he had some dust-ups with Spider-Man, Shang-Chi and Black Widow, but the boy wanted power. So he tried to take over Clan Yoshida that his old man was running until he died. But unfortunately for him, it's being run by his half-sister, Mariko. And she's getting hitched and is about to become Mrs. Wolverine. Rogue's also here, fresh off being a villain with a weird old-school hairstyle, trying it on with Wolvie on a mission. Not now, love. Anyway, Wolverine takes him down and then gets rejected at the altar, scandalous. And then Ken lets his sister be the boss, giving digs to Wolverine all the way. Alright, you dumped him, no need to kick him while he's down, Mariko. There's some more shenanigans with Ken, Wolverine in an eye patch, and the first Muramasa blade. It controls people's mind, but also gives them powers. When Ken gets hold of it, the sword thinks, yeah, I like this guy, I'm going to let him be my master. Which Kenny loves because he can chuck some tachyons into it. He's had some escapades with the Big Hero 6 team, no, not that one, this one, and more recently he's been resurrected on Krakoa and shares a drink with Wolvie. Krakoa solves everything. So in terms of feats, the Silver Samurai is strong. He catches Spidey with a glancing blow once, sends the boy flying. That tachyon field is decent too, it helps him explode walls. He's fast enough to deflect bullets, blowing the mind of some goons in a bar. And he does it again here even better because it's just one. Very Deadpool in Wolverine Origins. And he's fast enough to get the drop on Wolverine, giving him a good old gut stab. And we remember this panel from the X-Men where Danger, the sentient being powering the Danger Room, assesses the X-Men coming at them and shows Wolverine's reaction time has been a ridiculous 0.3 seconds. So well done, Ken. He also takes a punch from the beast that is Luke Cage really fucking well, and is generally a very well respected fighter. He's so good he makes Wolverine smile. Oh bless him. So in one of the many cash grab movies featuring good old Hughes Wolverine, what is that hair? It was a real disappointment to see that Kenichi isn't even a mutant in the Wolverine. He's not Mariko's half brother either. They were lovers. Weird. He's handy in a fight and with his bow and arrow, but in the film it's Mariko's granddad who's technically the Silver Samurai. He's randomly the guy Wolvie saves from a nuke, and the samurai is just a giant fucking robot suit that he uses to stay alive. So far, so big CG fuckathon. But the annoying thing is that they took the tachyon power Ken has in the comics and just made it so that the Silver Samurai suit has an energized adamantium katana, which is why it can cut through everything, even Wolverine's adamantium claws. Side note, why would they design the way to extract the healing power as 3 screws perfectly placed to go in through his claws? That's a bit complicated, isn't it? Sometimes when I do these breakdowns it's excusable for nerfing or changing of a character, but this I think is just studio execs chopping and changing shit to suit what they think cinema goers would like. To be fair, it did good money, but Fox execs are the worst. Alright, in at number 2 today, it's the Juggernaut Kane Marko. I love this character. He's the half-brother of old Charlie Xavier, don't you know? He wasn't very nice to him growing up, but to be fair, his dad was a dick. And he's not a mutant either. He gets his power from the gem of Cyttorak. Cyttorak being a big beast of a being from the Crimson Cosmos. If you touch this gem, you get the powers, and apparently the name of the Juggernaut. So poor old Kane couldn't even choose a cool one like Barrage or Sir Smash-a-Lot. But you do become Cyttorak's avatar. Interestingly, during the Fear Itself run, Colossus took the mantle on for a bit and was a beast. And he was in constant battle with being a bad boy because he's usually so nice. So these powers that you get from Cyttorak are that you're an unstoppable force. Basically superhuman strength, invulnerability, some kind of force field, and once you get going, it's pretty impossible to stop him. The only thing he's weak to is mental attacks, if he can get his helmet off. Although more recently he's made it so that doesn't matter. And he's also weak against mystical attacks, Thor managing to make him go backwards once. He's one of the characters who's also flip-flopped and spent a period being nice, and he was actually part of the X-Men. He got very attached to Squid Boy, who was killed by Black Tom Cassidy. What a dickhead, how could he?
You killed Black Tom, you racist son of a bitch!
So Juggernaut is considered to be one of the strongest characters around, so what feats did he get up to? The dude is just ridiculously strong. Right up top, it's always useful when you can get some of the heaviest hitters in the Marvel Universe to show the strength of someone. You got Ben Grimm, The Thing. He's hard, literally, as in rock, not turned on or anything, I don't think. Anyway, in some old school adventures, Juggernaut slaps him about with ease. Okay, Thor, he's a big hitter. He's got big old muscles and a hammer, and he can hear individual raindrops. Useful. Juggy takes him down at one point like he's a nobody, and then he just strolls off. He's bashed Thor about quite a bit. He can't lift his hammer though. Of course he's not worthy. He takes a smack off the hammer fine as well, and he even no-sells the God Blast, Thor's super mega power attack thing, which is what makes him take that step back once. Thor, who apparently cannot remember that he's tried to take down Juggernaut before, just doing the same thing again. And cut it out with the fancy speak, mate. So Mr. Hulk, we know he's a beast, and some of his battles with Juggernaut are mighty impressive. There's some older examples where Juggernaut talks really weird, and he's giving Hulk the good old-fashioned pub kick. Keeping it in with the fight moves mostly seen when scrapping outside a pub, we've got the classic headlock against the Hulk. Without his armour as well, just smashing his face in and knocking him out. A bit more playground style with the Hulk now, holding his arms down while someone else punches in the stomach. Classic bully move. So the Hulk has been at different power levels over time, but World War Hulk is one of the stronger ones, so Juggernaut matching him here is just impressive. Until Hulk gives it the classic sidestep and push, sending him on their way. I used to use that move all the time. That's why I love these Juggernaut v Hulk scraps. I've really seen my younger self in them. You've also got him smashing Hyperion up. He's very tough. We mentioned that when Corvus Glaive cuts him. And he knocks over the Stranger, who's a Galactus level being, hence why Juggernaut legs it afterwards. So let's get to the movies. First up, Vinnie fucking Jones. Now look, I love him in Lock, Stock. That film when I was growing up was one of my absolute favourites. It still is.
Fucking hell, John. You always walk around with that in your pocket.
Oi! You use language like that again, son. You wish you hadn't.
Sorry, Dad.
Right, we'll put the rest of the stuff in that. You can go on a plastic bag tonight, John. You owe what you owe. And by the time this tan's faded, you want to have paid.
But look, he was an average footballer, mostly famous for grabbing Gazza's nuts once, but the man is not a good actor. Probably why they just went, look, yeah, sure, be English in this film. You're not going to be able to handle an American accent. And the prosthetics they gave him are ridiculous, not to mention the weird bondage outfit he's chosen to wear. I haven't seen that in the comics. He does show some strength in bits, chucking Wolverine around, although his punch should really be sending him flying. He's knocking people over. Oh yes, very funny with the bowling pin sound. Now I know Juggernaut isn't the most serious of characters, but he was way too comic reliefy as well.
You can let me out of here, I need a pee.
And just the way he busts through those walls, I think it just looks crap. Firstly, not to be too I think you'll find, but yeah, I think you'll find he's not a mutant, so Leech wouldn't make him bash into the wall and knock himself out. And then there's this line.
I'm the Juggernaut, bitch!
A shameless attempt at being relevant after this video went viral at the time.
Charlie, get in my head. I'm the Juggernaut, bitch.
Poor. So, like I mentioned in the Nerfed Heroes video, Deadpool did him much more justice. He obviously doesn't have much backstory in it, but I like that he does mention being Professor X's brother. He's got a similar vibe in terms of how he speaks, and he shows some crazy strength, although to be honest, maybe not enough. The fight with Colossus is great, and to its credit, he has the upper hand with him, much like when they match up in the comics, and it's only when Colossus fights dirty and gets help that he wins. Alright, next up is someone who more recently has definitely been on the lighter side of the force, but started as a baddie and is generally still a bit stuck up. It's Emma Frost. So again, not so much of a nerf per se, as in the movies, she's just meh. nothing except an excuse to capitalise on the popularity of January Jones at the time. But because she is so meh, it's a world away from a character in the comics who's so central to so much. So Emma crosses paths with the X-Men early doors, but really starts out as a bit of a sexy dancer at the Hellfire Club. She was actually approached by Professor X and Moira McTaggart to be in the X-Men in the mission that we mentioned in this Darwin episode. She's using her powers of telepathy to make men, including our friend Sebastian Shaw, aka Kevin Bacon, 6 degrees people, making them see exactly what they want to see. I'm so glad they didn't put Kevin in that fucking outfit in the movie. She can do this because she is one of the most powerful telepaths in the world, better than Professor X apparently. More on her feats later. So she rises through the ranks of this Hellfire Club, which is a ridiculous old-timey setup. I mean, look, it was written in the 70s, so I guess that's the excuse. And she becomes the White Queen to Seb's Black King. But Emma loves teaching, okay? So she starts teaching kids at the Hellfire Club. Then at her own school, and creates a team called the Hellions, but they all get killed. So she has a change of heart and joins up with the X-Men and eventually becomes co-head mistress, and she's basically been a goodie ever since, shacking up with her co-head master Cyclops at one point. Uh-oh, mixing business and pleasure, you two. She also underwent a secondary mutation, where some mutants get extra powers in their 20s. Hers was to become Solid Diamond and be nigh on invulnerable when she was present at the Genosian genocide, which Cassandra Nova apparently engineered for her. Cassandra Nova being Charles Xavier's kind of evil twin sister, Mumu Dry, who Charlie attacked in the womb because she was evil and she was stillborn but survived by clinging to a sewer wall and is crazy powerful. Yeah, you know the one. Anyway, Emma Frost constantly gets referred to as being one of the best telepaths in the world. She can do things like broadcast messages to the entire world. She's constantly besting people like Charles Xavier or Rachel Summers. But probably what's most impressive is the skill, like turning people's powers off, making her team invisible. In one of my favourite storylines, allowing the team to communicate telepathically to hide what they're doing from people listening in. Or even making Wolverine act like a child. Cassandra Nova made her do it though. Her diamond form is bloody hardcore as well, taking a punch from Colossus when she insults his Mrs. Kitty Pryde, like she always does. And she takes a smack from World War Hulk, so he has to stick her in the ground. Yeah, okay, Colossus, you're going to beat him, mate. She's also an absolute smartass, keeping that edginess from when she was a bad un. So one absolute disappointment in the movies. First Class, like I've said, has some good bits, but I hate January Jones's Emma Frost in this movie. That's a strong word, but I really do. She was so great as Betty in Mad Men, but in this movie she's just like a vacant husk of a person. It's not a good sign when you have to have a shitty comic to explain the backstory of your character. She's just Fox capitalising on her Mad Men popularity and using the Emma Frost character to chuck her in a padded bra. As far as the movie is concerned, she's just a lackey for Sebastian Shaw in his Hellfire Club, and oh wait, there was another appearance by Emma Frost in X-Men Origins, of course. Oh wait, no, that's Emma Silver Fox, and she's just able to go diamond. Nice one, Fox. So yes, in X-Men First Class, she's a telepath. Well done. Randomly, she's super fast in her diamond form, which again changes clothes like Darwin's power. That FX team. And she can punch Magneto off a boat. But then later, she gets manhandled to the bed. And aside from that, she's just pretty boring, and every single line delivery just seemed bad.
Don't worry. You don't have to say a word.
I can't tell if it's on purpose, but it's a real shame. And I have to not think about the Fox execs getting all excited over the chance to put her in some of these scenes. Can you tell I'm not a fan of them? Okay, and number 4 today is a hell of a character. It's Raven Darkholme, aka Mystique. So Mystique is another character that has a long and complex history and has been involved with the Marvel Universe intricately, always popping up here and there. She's what's known as a metamorph, so she can psionically alter the formation of her biological cells at will. God knows how that works, but then how does one channel beams from another dimension through their eyes, man? None of this makes sense, that's why we love it. She can't get the powers of anyone she changes into though, mind, so it makes it a bit weird that that's why Trask is after her powers for his Sentinels in Days of Future Past. More on that in a bit. But as a result of her physiology, Mystique has been around for a long time, and the best bit about her is that she's really only ever looking out for herself. Oh, and her longtime partner Irene Adler, aka Destiny. I mentioned it in this video with Rogan. It's pretty remarkable they had a lesbian couple back then, very progressive. Although apparently Chris Claremont wanted to make it so that Destiny and Mystique had a biological baby, Nightcrawler, and that Mystique changed into a man to consummate it, but that was shot down as they weren't that progressive. Irene Adler had such a hardcore moment in House of X when she got Pyro to kill Moira McTaggart slowly so that she could remember how painful it was to die when she gets reincarnated. This leads me to another element of Mystique that is different to the average character. She has gotten it on with a load of other Marvel characters. Her TO, and wife is obviously Destiny, but she's also been serious with Wolverine. She had a one-night stand with Azazel, him in X-Men First Class, played by Jason Fleming. They're Nightcrawler's parents. She got serious with Sabretooth as two different people, the offspring of one being Graydon Creed, who's a right shit. She got serious with Forge, a mutant who can build things. Had a bit of a casual thing with Phantom X, another Weapon X alumni. She got very serious with Iceman, who actually recently came out as gay, and then had a brief thing with Daken, Wolverine's son. So she is nothing if not open to everything, but clearly has a thing for borderline feral men. In terms of powers, as a mutant, she's a bit stronger and faster than a normal human, and then after being exposed to some radiation during that time Juggernaut bashed a stranger, she can actually use her power to alter her body in weird ways, like getting extra arms and being more jacked to take down a bunch of dudes, turning into a giant monster to take down another big monster. She makes Wolverine's claws and then extends them to kill a dude. She can grow wings now to fly, she can move her internal organs around to avoid them getting hit, and she once changed her matter to avoid an explosion, but that ain't something she can do again apparently. So again, whilst mainly a villain in the Marvel comics, she has dabbled with being alongside the X-Men, but mostly returns to her roots and will betray anyone. And she's had some great fights showing her ingenuity and skill, like when she took down a load of Wolverine people who didn't have their healing factors to be fair, using smoke and sneakiness. I love when she's being two of them at the same time. Speaking of Wolverine, she has an epic fight with the man himself, one-on-one, using all her weaponry expertise, fighting skill, and her ability to just plain wind him up, ending in a stalemate where she shoots him up the nose and then throws up green stuff on him. Then she scarpers. This fight with Wolverine is one where Mystique is in her absolutely naked form. Apparently she's always naked and just metamorphosizes, that's definitely a word, her clothes. So usually in the comics she has her iconic white outfit on, you know, for modesty, because comics appreciate modesty. This leads us to the movies. You can imagine those grubby Fox execs finding one comic where she's just blue and naked and rubbing their hands together at the idea of spraying Rebecca Romijn's body blue. So the first two X-Men did Mystique some justice. I mean, the powers are the powers, they definitely got them right. And she's definitely got some fighting skills when she takes down Wolverine. I remember the FX on that kick being amazing for its time. The second one, the best one, again, she has a great scene taking all the guards down. I love it that it ends with her just flipping the bird. And there's a nice example of her trying it on with Wolverine, which feels very true to the character. She gets dicked over in number 3, losing her powers and getting ditched by Magneto. They love pairing her up with Magneto in the movies, but they barely do anything together in the comics. And then there's the Jennifer Lawrence version. She can be a great actress. Silver Linings Playbook is one of my all-time favourites, but in these movies she's just so up and down. In First Class the character's just a bit meh, mainly as she's being heroic, and that's just not Mystique. In the studio saw sense, and in the excellent days of Future Past, she's an absolute badass, kicking the shit out of people, seducing people, just being loads more like the Raven we know and love.
What's the matter, baby? You don't think I look pretty like this?
Also really good at sliding on the floor is Mystique in the movies. But then we get to X-Men Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix, and it's just like Jen doesn't care anymore. And the decision by the studio to basically make her the Cyclops of the team, because she's Jennifer Lawrence and everyone loved her as Katniss Everdeen,
I volunteer as tribute!
is wince-inducing. So less about the powers here, she's always able to shapeshift, and I think her growing extra arms and muscles would have been a bit weird. But the difference most is that she's just not the machine she was in the comics. And where was Irene? Alright, at number 5 today is one of the oldest mutants around. It's En Sabanur. It's Apocalypse. So Apocalypse's history can't be covered in the 5th degree of this video. Suffice to say, he's one of the oldest mutants around, being born about 5,000 years ago in Egypt. He's gone through a lot on his way to becoming the powerful dude that he is. He's an external, a bunch of 9, maybe 10 mutants that are immortal, maybe more on them in another video. But along his way, he's come across a few big names, a bit like Forrest Gump. He got started around when Kang the Conqueror was lording it up as Rama Tut. Kang knew what Apocalypse would become. He was already getting super strong and tough, and so he tried to be his dad, but no dice. So he tried to kill him, but ended up fleeing. Apocalypse also had a spell with Moon Knight.
I can't tell the difference between my waking life and dreams.
Fighting off the Brood and effectively helping to start S.H.I.E.L.D. He had contact with the Celestials, who gave him a ship that would give him some more power. He beat up Thor early on while he was in Scandinavia. And then he had some skirmishes with a young Cable travelling through time with a lovely ponytail. And as a result, ended up bonding with the Celestial ship more and becoming even more powerful. Now he could control his molecular structure. Yowza! He's taken some long naps in his ship, and he'd pop up every now and then. He had a fight with Vlad the Impaler, which led to him becoming Dracula. And he had to take care of that mess, but not before meeting Nathaniel Essex, the man all mixed up with the Summers Boys. Apocalypse turned him into the pasty goth dude that we know him as, but then he got fed up of Apocalypse, so ended up facilitating the birth of Cable to take him out. Apocalypse realises that this baby growing up will travel through time and do him over, so he infects him with the techno-organic virus. At one point he shares some consciousness with Cyclops, he gets beaten and resurrected as a child in a dapper school uniform with a nice side parting, creating the Marvel equivalent of would you kill Hitler if he was a child if you could. Turns out Phantom X would, and then also clone him and try and make him good. Apocalypse is immortal though, so he pops up again, creates a new body, and then more recently he's on Krakoa on the Quiet Council, and we'll stop there because we don't want to spoil any of the stuff that's happened more recently. Oof, what a history. So he's one of the most powerful mutants ever. As mentioned, he basically can't die. He's a hell of a telepath, as you can see in this messy page where he's taking on Jean Grey and Cyclops at the same time. He can change his molecular structure into anything. He can fire energy blasts from his eyes that can take down a young Thor. Speaking of Thor, as mentioned before, he's taken him down and shown how tough his celestial armour is. He's strong enough to restrain the Hulk, he's fast enough to punch Quicksilver. Before he gets a new body, he can take everything all the X-Men and the Inhumans can throw at him, and he can take a Cyclops blast right to the chops with ease. The dude can basically do anything. Oh, and he has a rotating bunch of Horsemen of the Apocalypse, but I'm not talking about them today. So in this instance, the film version of him is pretty impressive. The film itself, however, is very much not okay. Aside from, as mentioned, the decision to make Mystique the field commander, it's just a really shonky movie. And look, I bloody love Oscar Isaacs. I even liked him in Sucker Punch. His Apocalypse is, straight off the bat though, just too normal sized. The comic book version is 7 feet tall, and I would have loved to have seen him just be this hulking brute in this one. Instead, he does weird things like touching TVs and learning stuff, and then has some telekinesis, and he's able to make a man melt into a wall. But he does show some of the same abilities. He can teleport, he's got strong telepathic skill taking on Professor X in the mind. He's got some healing ability when Mystique slashes his throat. He's got super strength, speed and durability when taking on Quicksilver. And he has the power to make people stronger, again like in the comics. And he can create force field, he can make cool arts and crafts, and again melt people into walls. Not bad. He also does give all the X-Men a tough time before the Phoenix gets involved. So he's definitely not been nerfed too much, but he's just not the powerhouse from the comics. And I know, it's a movie, so it needs to be wrapped up nice and neatly, but he's a one and done. And deserves more respect, to be honest. And he also looks too much like Ivan Ooze from Power Rangers.
They call me Ivan Ooze.
Okay, our final degree today. It's the big one. He's bad, but he's also good. He's complicated. He's Max Eisenhard. Or is he Eric Lenscher? He's definitely Magneto. Magneto is one of the most iconic characters in the Marvel Comics universe. He's been around since the 1960s in the first ever X-Men comic, only 12 cents. And he's been up to all sorts of shenanigans. So Magneto, aka Max Eisenhard, started off as a Holocaust survivor who developed his mutant powers that allowed him to control magnetic fields when his family were killed in a brutal way. He had a rough go of it early on, but he eventually found his way to the United States where he got involved with the X-Men. Now, Magneto's relationship with the X-Men is complicated. On the one hand, he's a mutant just like them, and he's got a pretty good point about the way humans mistreat mutants. But on the other hand, he's a total megalomaniac who wants to take over the world and subjugate humanity, which isn't exactly in line with the X-Men's values. Over the years, Magneto's gone through a lot of changes. He started as a full-on villain back when the comics were simple, bent on world domination and mutant supremacy with his Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. No ambiguity with that name. Other times, he's been more of an anti-hero, trying to protect mutants from persecution and oppression. But no matter what, he's always been an absolute beast. And in amongst it all, he's created Genosha, only for that to be wiped out, as mentioned with Emma Frost. He's had some kids, one of whom wiped out 90% of mutants in a flash, plus plenty of other stuff. In recent years, Magneto's mellowed out a bit. He's still got his strong beliefs about mutant rights, but he's not quite as gung-ho about violence and domination as he used to be. Of course, he's still a formidable opponent, and he's not above a little bit of mischief from time to time, and we won't go into the recent stuff as well, because spoilers. So let's get to those bloody powers. He was recently classed as an Omega level mutant, and consistently referred to as one of the most powerful around. So he's got the powers of magnetism, and everything that includes. So it's not just getting big bits of metal and chucking them around. Yeah, he can do that. He does it all the time. He loves doing it. But it's also things like controlling the iron in people's blood to fling them around, or just explode them. If you've got a skeleton covered in metal, he'll snatch that out of you too. It's also creating global EMPs, knocking everything out around the world. He can take down the Avengers all in one go. He can protect people from nuclear explosions with his force fields. In the Ultimate Universe, he even shifted the magnetic poles of the Earth, causing some carnage. One of the most insane things I've seen him do was off the back of one of my favourite runs in the X-Men featuring the Break World. It ends with Kitty Pryde phased into a giant hollow bullet travelling across space. She's a goner. But Magneto spends days searching for it across the universe and manages to pull it back and get Kitty out. Mental. So yes, I think he's pretty badass. And so the movies have simplified him a lot. The early movies had Sir Ian McKellen as an older Magneto, which was kind of fine. He is always depicted as being a bit older, having grown up in the 40s, and his powers are pretty basic. It's literally like he can just control metal rather than magnetism in general. So there's some nice displays of power, but a bit meh compared to the comics. I do like when he stops that bullet and pushes it into the dude's head. Me in 2000 found that very affecting. And of course X-Men 2 showed how devastating he can be with just excess iron in the blood escaping from prison in that excellent scene. And then he's casually crushing people in cars in X-Men 3 and obviously plays around with the Golden Gate Bridge like it was nothing. Now Fassbender I bloody love, ever since he was the skinny ripped dude in 300 and getting his dick out in Shane. His Magneto is proper badass, moving some serious metal in the movies. I've mentioned it before that I love the Nazi hunter aspect to him in First Class. That scene in the bar, so good. And because it's the Fass, you get a real sense that there's some darkness to him. And he shows some proper power. He does the standard fling in a metal, and he's got a great fight scene in Dark Phoenix, taking down some aliens in some very cool ways before again casually just crushing the train cars. And in Days of Future Past he shows some frankly ridiculous skill putting metal into the Sentinels, which somehow lets him control them with words.
Do what you were made for.
Never mind, it's a cool idea. He also gets an upgrade from Apocalypse and starts changing the magnetic poles of the Earth, causing some havoc and a nice nod to the comics. So yeah, these last 2 degrees just go to show that even the super powerful characters in the movies have still been nerfed a little bit compared to the comics. Understandably so, I want to make that clear. But there we have it, 6 of the finest villains X-Men money can buy. So do all the normal things, smash like, smash subscribe, and before you go and say, oh, what about Hulk, he's been nerfed, and also Thanos and a load of others, check out our other videos because we may have talked about them. For now though, I've been Danny Baker, this is 6 Degrees, and I'll see you later.